Hey everyone, Psych Life here. I just wanted to do a short video as to what exactly is emotional and psychological trauma, unscripted, why it's important, how to go about it, and what it is. And I think we should start by what it is. Emotional and psychological trauma is the perception of an event that leads to a person's sense of security being shattered and all of a sudden having difficulty to cope with life's daily tasks. So why is this important and how does this happen, right? So this is important because the mental health field and the psychology field is starting to view diagnosis in a different light. When a person experiences an event that causes an extraordinarily amount of stress, it can lead to not only brain changes because of neurological wiring, but it can lead a person to feel helpless and lose their sense of security. What are some tools that professionals use to assess trauma? Well, the most popular one right now is the ACE trauma scale. It does not assess trauma, it just brings up the chances a person may have experienced a traumatic event. Now, for a long time, people thought that traumatic experiences often involve threat to someone's life. But now we know that that is not necessarily true, because a child can also experience trauma without having a threat to their life. How, you may ask? I'll give you a perfect example. Divorce, foster care, sometimes that there's a lost sense of security, especially also if the divorce is ugly, and just things that may happen throughout childhood that can completely change the reality of that child and allow their brain to be wired in such a way where they're in a constant reaction state. So I separated the way someone can experience trauma into three ways. One-time events, meaning one day I step out and all of a sudden I get in a car crash. All of a sudden, if that car crash is really intense, and depending on how I perceive that event, then maybe I may have difficulty getting in a vehicle. And if I do get in a vehicle, I'm in constant flux and awareness and always looking behind me to see if someone's gonna ram in back of me like they did the time before. So I'm gonna put that's the first way you can experience a one-time event. The second way someone can experience trauma is an ongoing relentless stress. Meaning, if I go to a job for about 3 years where every day it's a crisis management situation, maybe this is why I've made videos about police officers. This can cause someone to experience the symptoms of trauma. I'll give you an example. If a police officer lives in an area where it's a high crime rate, he's working in a place where there's a high crime rate, then all of a sudden, every day he goes into work, he's in constant alertness. He never knows what's gonna happen. And he's constantly engaging, or she's constantly engaging in dangerous situations. This can lead to the officer all of a sudden beginning to experience symptoms of trauma. And we're gonna get to some of those symptoms. Or if an individual is living in an environment where there's a high crime rate, high substance use rate, then that person may also be in constant stress, and this can lead them to experience traumatic symptoms, especially if they moved out and they come back to that environment. The third way is commonly overlooked, which basically means someone could have had surgery that gone bad and now they need to go back to the surgery room and they're not sure and they're scared and they're very stressed. So these are the three ways that I separated that someone may experience a traumatic event. A one-time event, being in a constant state of stress because due to the environment, or just commonly overlooked causes. So what are some ways a child or an individual may experience a traumatic event? Well, being, for one, in an unstable or unsafe environment, maybe coming from a place where there's high crime, or there's coming from a place where there's no security for that child. Separation from a parent, I already talked about that with divorce. Serious illness, this can be detrimental to not only the individual but to the families. Intrusive medical procedures, domestic violence, neglect. I can keep going on and on and on this list. But the main thing I want a person to understand is that trauma sometimes, especially emotional psychological trauma, cannot be seen. And I'll give you, one day I posted something on Instagram which I got a lot of positive feedback on, but I got just as much negative feedback, and maybe this might be a good time to explain myself. When I said that people begin substance use, that substance use is a disease. Substance use is a disease because the body's craving the substance, and if it doesn't get the substance, then all of a sudden it doesn't operate properly. But when I said that Sometimes substance use begins by trying to escape reality. I don't know why I got a lot of heat for that, because if you look at the statistics, out of every 4 individuals that has a substance abuse problem, 3 of them have experienced a traumatic event in their life. What does that mean? That when a person perceives an event and all of a sudden starts experiencing traumatic symptoms, this can lead to substance use. This can lead to the person engaging in unhealthy behaviors. Well, I don't want to get off topic, so I'm going to keep going here for a second. So what are some of the psychological symptoms of trauma? Well, insomnia, not being able to sleep, racing heartbeats, headaches, fatigue, and difficulty concentrating. If you looked at some of my videos, these 5 are also, some of them are also part of depressive symptoms. But it's important to note that trauma and depression are different. Why? Because trauma stems from a perceived event. Depression is almost a state of mind. We can get more in depth later on in other videos. If you guys have questions, just write it down in the comments and we'll definitely address and conversate about it. Mood swings is another symptom. Having guilt or shame from what's happened. Withdrawing from others. And this is a big one. Withdrawing from others. Oftentimes, if someone's experienced an intense traumatic event or is perceived to have experienced an intense traumatic event, they don't want to talk to others about it. And in fact, they want to separate themselves from others because they need their space and they don't even really know how to communicate what's going on. I don't want to say but if someone's experiencing traumatic symptoms, then I have some tips for them. But someone may experience traumatic symptoms for a day, for a week, for a month, for a year, or for their whole life. And depending on the perception of this event, it can be chronic or acute. But whether the symptoms are acute or chronic, I did write down some tips that I recommend. For number 1, get moving. This means exercise. Keep yourself busy. Keep yourself going. Be mindful of your body. Oftentimes when someone experiences a traumatic event, their neurological wiring changes, especially with the limbic system pertaining in association to that event. And they have trouble get going. They have trouble functioning in their daily activities. I'm asking to keep moving. Do not stop. Do not stand still. Tip number 2, don't isolate yourself. Don't withdraw from others. If you need help, seek help. If you need help and you can't afford it, you can't see a community psychologist or psychiatrist, talk to a loved one about what's going on. Get help. You're not alone. Tip number 3, self-regulate your nervous system. Here in Western society, that doesn't mean much, because when we talk about the body and self-regulation, people just throw it all to the side. What that means is be in touch with your body. Be mindful about your body. Be mindful about your feelings. Be mindful about your thoughts. Be mindful, because remember, trauma is not the event, but the perception of event. I'm not saying it's not real or it is real, but it's the perception of an event. And getting in touch with yourself can relieve some of these symptoms. Number 4, take care of your health. So as I mentioned earlier, someone that may be struggling with trauma may have difficulty sleeping. I think I wrote earlier, insomnia, fatigue, difficulty concentrating. So take care of your health. Make sure that you're sleeping properly. No alcohol or drugs. We already mentioned earlier that 3 out of the 4 individuals that experience a traumatic event have been found to be abusing substances. So this is an important fact. 3 out of the 4 individuals who are abusing substance have a trauma history, and that needs to be addressed. That's it, guys. That's all I got for today. I hope you enjoyed this video, because I enjoyed making it, and I really hope that you enjoy when I do these. I don't do them too often. I'm going to try to change that, and I just appreciate all the support, okay, as usual. And psych life, guys. I hope you guys have a good one.